broken up the entire slide deck into 5 sections. In this lightning talk, I will just merely quickly touch on the various parts of the slide talk, and then later on, the participants can actually read the entire slide deck themselves for the extra context in that. And then, yeah, without further ado, let's start the individual slides. So on the first part, typically when I start a new project, especially a code project, I will actually do a lot of research on the topic, on the application. And for that, using Hermes, what I found is I can actually, without asking for it, get verification of the research that I did on the web. And it also will bind the information from the actual LLM together with web information, streamline it, and put it into a summarized document in my project. So on the particular part, it is important to actually verify your research documentation for the project. Otherwise, you end up giving guardrails to the coding agent to actually produce slop from the research slop. So you compound the effect and you make it worse rather than better. As part of this, the research, you need to actually go through the actual research before you start coding, because this is the strong guidelines you're giving the entire LLM and coding agent on how to structure your code and how to actually write the code. The main part that I found after doing research is as you start coding, while the coding agent is running, especially with Hermes, I can steer the project or steer the coding agent with a /steer command. And doing that, I can literally tell it on anything that it's had learned as part of the coding exercise to actually immediately pause the project, save it to a skill, maintain the skill as it goes, and then after that, the coding agent will return to the project and then continuously maintain this skill as part of the entire coding exercise, giving you like a expanded memory on a particular item that you can actually see the coding agent is either learning from, struggling with, and learning at the same time, because the LLMs that we use tend not to have all this knowledge. Adding them to skills, and not just the workflows and skills, but actual knowledge, you end up helping yourself and the coding agent to actually finish the project. I'll just go for the next section. The next section typically being several interesting projects that I actually did already with the coding agent. So far, I'm focusing on building projects using ADA. And a lot of people will probably wonder why ADA. So ADA is quite old, 1990s, and it is memory safe, probably more so than Rust. When you compile your code and your code is compiled, the chance that the application will die is almost zero. So the reliability of the code is meant for aerospace and military grade quality. So It is free, and yeah, I found it quite refreshing on how stable and how quickly you can code with it. It is very tough for a person to code in ADA, but not so for the Hermes coding agent. So I've done a few. I've started a like-for-like porting of the structure of CPM. Then I also started a bare metal ADA kernel. This is like a replacement for the Linux kernel, where I can actually run large parts of the kernel external to the kernel. So networking will run as an application. And literally the entire syscall interface is listed in that modular kernel as unimplemented. And as you start the subcomponents of that particular kernel, it will list themselves as implemented and provide routing to the particular subsystem. I've actually subsequently expanded this particular project, and I've started re-implementing the entire kernel on L4RE, which is the same L4 kernel that L4 Linux was based on. But my main intent is not L4 Linux. I'm literally building a much more flexible kernel in the process. And it's mostly, at this point, an academic exercise for myself to see how easily I can actually implement this. The third project that I've gone and started is an implementation for the Raft consensus protocol for ADA. And it's meant more for the ADO subsystem on databases that are available for ADA, so that multiple applications can start on the same database, and the caching mechanism, as data is created, can be distributed between the various components that run on the same database. The last one mentioned is I'm currently looking for the Ansible part to replace the Ansible Python component with a more modern replacement that does not have the same Python module dependency that must be installed by hand. So it tends to be challenging for a number of reasons. I will have to redo the entire Python API for Ansible for the remote deployment of scripts to extra servers and clients going out on the network. So that part is still being architected so that we can actually get a proper functional Ansible without needing to replace even the modules that are currently available for Ansible. So one of the main things why I started doing this is I have implemented quite a large number of skills for several AI agents. There's about 76 or 78 different skills at this point. And I'm doing these projects to make sure the tooling and the actual methodology in some of the projects are actually sound, and that I've thought through a lot of the sequencing in some of the skills. And then the last part on the actual projects, or that I did for this talk, was more for the copyright or the copyright issues that can and do exist on AI-generated content. So a couple of weeks ago, there was a few court cases where a artist tried to register copyright on an image that he generated for like artistic purposes, and he was denied the copyright mainly because it was generated by AI. I think the court case went to it was actually litigated, and the denial was actually asserted. This was the US. Subsequently to scanning using my AI agent, actually I found quite a lot of local cases regarding AI and copyright. And the main thing on this is you need to talk to a lawyer because where code was generated by an AI agent, you don't have copyright. You can't assert copyright. And you can assert if you did the actual architecture part by hand, you can still assert copyright on the architecture. But if you do generate the architecture also by AI, you are also not even, you can't do copyright on that either. So, and I think South Africa and a lot of countries where you then have any protection is probably with, what do you call it? Trade secrets. So there's a whole section in the slide deck on copyright. Again, as I listed in the header for this particular slide, I'm not a lawyer. Talk to one. But on the other hand, when you have the ability to regenerate systems that took years to build in the question of days or weeks, what is the point of copyright anyway? If somebody copied some of your code or also got the same code from the AI LLM, you can literally regenerate that part and even improve it again in the time frame of days or weeks. So yeah, the time frames actually start to negate some of the copyright or the reasons for copyright in the code space. But that's my personal opinion. Yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. I'm quite through the